And I think there's something really important about having someone who can inspire and lead and do a vision and drive stuff in a direction.
It's just a different level of thinking and drive. But Steve, I think, had that communication thing going on.
Would Steve Jobs have been so successful if he wasn't so dedicated to his cause?
He's found an absolutely amazing film. I would put it on anyone's to watch list. In between, of course, what I do when I'm out drunk also is take pictures of my midnight cheeseburger I bought and send it to Joe and Ryan now because of my affinity for said film. Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast, as always with my very dear and close friends Jose Noya and Ryan Boniface. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you, Lee.
Yeah, good, thanks, Lee.
We are all in celebration. We will warn everyone who is watching on YouTube or listening across all podcast platforms that as it is Christmas, we are in the Christmas spirit. Joe is over in the Christmas spirit in his Christmas pajamas, and we are having a little beverage, as Joe would like to say, whilst we do the podcast. Joe is on the red wine. Are you 2 glasses in or 1 glass in?
2 at least.
He's 2 in. Ryan is necking the beers. Are you on number 1 or number 2? Number 2. And I am on my 2nd glass of Christmassy eggnog.
No chance. That was not your 2nd glass already, is it?
I had 1 before we started.
Oh, did you? Okay. All right. So can you match that on TikTok?
That's what they all say.
We may be full of extra merriment as we continue to drink during this podcast.
Yeah, it might get a bit risque, guys, on TikTok. So keep listening because it could get a bit risque with these two. They keep drinking. I just don't know what's going to happen. A bit nervous, to be fair. A bit nervous what might happen on this podcast.
Joe's going to take his Christmas pajamas off. That's what's going to happen.
No, you wish, Lee. That you wish. That's all.
We thank you, of course, out there for listening, downloading, watching, whatever you do. Follow us on social media at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. Appreciate all your support during 2021. Hopefully you follow us into 2022. So apparently it's my week to come up with a subject this week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. So I'd like to do, I took a break from it, my last subject, but I would like to do part 2 of my talk about the McDonald's film, The Founder.
Like McDonald's film it is. Which
I think, certainly for me here in the UK, is on Amazon, I think, is where I saw it. Great film about McDonald's. I think we called the episode I'm Loving It a few episodes back, if you listen in the archive. It was a really good chat, I think. And there's a bit I was going to follow up on in a second, actually, but about innovation, doing things differently, change, not being afraid to think outside the box, all that good stuff that the guys came up with who created McDonald's. Ryan, you said about, because one of the things I watched in the film that I really like is this, they were really keen on their keep it simple method, and they pushed through against all the perseverance. We talked about it last episode. I got to touch. It's really good, but then seeing so much expanded menu now, I was like, oh, they've lost a bit of that. But then Ryan, who has experience of said restaurant, talks about the fact that everything there, even when they do specials, is kind of based around, was it 6 core ingredients or 9 core ingredients?
It was something like 6, yeah.
Yeah, which I really liked, and it really struck me. And I went out to Poland recently, and I have to say their menu out there is awesome. Really, really good. And I was looking at the menu, and the first thing I went to is, I wonder what their 6 ingredients are. But I don't know, I found that quite reassuring that they'd kept to that mantra, and it's part of what their success is. And I just wanted to follow up on that little message. In between, of course, what I do when I'm out drunk also is take pictures of my midnight cheeseburger I bought and send it to Joe and Ryan now because of my affinity for said film.
I love that.
And then I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone and I'm like, why is there a photo of a half-eaten cheeseburger on my phone?
And actually, yeah, TikTok, you for a treat if you ever get those particular those pictures. Yeah, Lee half cut with his cheeseburger in hand.
It could be worse.
We get no context either. So I just wake up one morning, there's just a picture of a half-eaten cheeseburger.
Has anyone on TikTok had that half-eaten cheeseburger when you send a picture to someone? I sent that picture. Let me know. Let me know the top.
It's better than some of the other photos Lee sent me when he's been drunk.
Very true. Very, very true. See that
rabbit hole. I'm not going.
Now the drinks on, the truth's coming out. So the flip side. So I really think anyone who's a bit entrepreneurial, likes thinking outside the box, likes how things have come about, I think it's a great film to watch. And I say there's that side of it where they came up with it, what they did, their ideas, the mantra, the methodology. The second part of the film is about, well, it's not the second part, but it's almost to me the second thread is about Ray Kroc, who's credited as, you know, the man who made McDonald's, who was, and Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you did your university degree in McDonald's startup when you worked at McDonald's, but he essentially came across the McDonald's brothers. He was a traveling salesman of some sort and saw the benefit in their restaurant that they had, their single restaurant. They tried franchising, it didn't go very well. They failed, they drew back. And he really saw the potential in it, that their great idea, but that they weren't utilizing it because they just had this one little restaurant. So he came on board as their franchise manager, something like that along those lines, on the proviso that he would go out, he would set up the franchises, you know, sell it to people, and he would manage the franchise arm of the business, and he would effectively get a commission for each franchise that's set up, or it's like 1% of their profit, something like that was built, you know, the more franchises he grows, the more money he makes. And they set up an agreement like that, and he went out and he started doing that, and that's how it started to grow and grow and grow. And that's where the bit I talked about in the last episode was, where he didn't go out and they were all going a bit off piste, and he changed his method. So what they did, and then we talked about this last one, but rather he picked a certain type of person to run it, which was people who effectively were putting all their money in it, so they had to work in it, so they had more skin in the game, and they were more invested in it. They were more likely to follow the model, which they did, and it worked. And, you know, McDonald's on every corner, so to speak. But then I think he spoke to someone else, I'm probably getting it a bit wrong, but he spoke to someone who suggested that the money wasn't in the franchises, the money was in the real estate. So what he did was set up his own separate company, which purchased land, which as a part of all the agreements, they would lease the land back to the franchisees. And the brothers were completely cut out of this, and he made all the money from this, and it was, you know, significant sums more than anything else. And he effectively used this almost like a hostile takeover, and he eventually pushed them out of the business. There's some sort of story that there's a handshake agreement that they get a percentage of profits for life that he never followed through on, or whatever it was. But he kind of took their idea and muscled them out of their own business and turned it into the global thing that it is now. And that's the part I wanted to talk about, because I suppose I've got two thoughts before I hand over to you expand on. In fact, I'll go back to them first. What's your thoughts on that story and what he did and his actions before I give you some extra thoughts? Head over to Christmas Hat Noya for your initial thoughts.
I don't like it. That's what I don't like about it. It's just because it's a moral code thing. I think, you know, I know you can do business, but I think doing business right. But then had that not happened, would be where it is. Could it be better than where it is? Who knows? Yeah, for me, it just doesn't sit right, that sort of thing, where, you know, I know business is cutthroat, it is cutthroat, I suppose, but I just think there could have been other ways, but again, it did work, and look where it is now, right? It's massive, absolutely huge. So that's my short answer, really, is that I don't really like it. I know they're a bit stuck in their ways, the brothers at the time, and you could make tons of money off the back of it. You know, I was a businessman, but I don't like the morality of it. That's where it sits with me.
And Ryan, who probably has far more insight on this subject than the two of us.
I don't think it would have been as successful if he wasn't as, if he didn't do the things that he did. He took away, he almost took the personality out of the idea. All it would have taken if they were still on board was them to say, well, I don't like that, I don't like that. And the things get a bit funny and it doesn't really take off and these things fail. Whereas he had the model, he knew how it worked. He had the almost conveyor belt
didn't
design.
He want to make some changes to it that they didn't like, and that's part of why he wanted them out of the way? Am I right in that?
Yeah, I mean, when I did whatever the studies I did, it didn't kind of go back that far. But yeah, I think there were some, because they just wanted to do hamburgers and things like that, but he was like, no, I think we could make money off of chicken wings or ribs, and that's what some of the franchises did at the start.
He changed it from real milkshakes to like powdered stuff, and I think that was the crux where they hit an impasse, and he wanted to go one way and they wanted to go another.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if they'd kept on board, the milkshake machine would still be working in most McDonald's across the country. No, I'm joking. I don't know. But yeah, I think if they'd have still been involved, there would have been a lot of hand on, hand off type. I don't like this, I don't like that, I want it to be this way. and maybe it wouldn't have succeeded. But as I say, he knew the format, he knew how it worked, he knew what to do. He had his finger in a lot of the different pies, if you like, of how it ran, the leasing of the land, as you say, the running of the restaurant, and he just expanded it from there. But morally and fairnessly, if you like, or in fair, to be completely fair, it isn't right, is it? Let's be honest. But if they'd have trademarked their work, would this have happened? Who knows?
I don't know, do we? I think that's the thing.
Good thoughts. Just very quickly, as is the risk you put yourself on when you're out on TikTok, I would like to give a shout out to Mr. Oxlong, first name Mike. Good effort, whoever put on there. Good effort.
Yeah, nice spray shout out, Lee.
So thank you for that. Appreciate the input to the show. So and you're right. So this is where I want to dive a bit deeper on that, because I'm the same, that I'm kind of the view, and I've set out there if I go too deep, that whilst I think the outcome's right, that I don't think it would have become what it is, because the brothers were they were like, no, this is it. This is what we do. Even though they had a fantastic idea, they couldn't scale it. They couldn't grow it. They didn't have the personality to do that. And it wouldn't have become what it is whatsoever. Did he have to freeze them out? Probably not. So there's different ways on doing it. And for me, it parallels a little bit. And this is where I want to kind of, again, on the pros and cons and whatever else, with the story of Apple. And again, there's a couple of great films about that. I think the one with Ashton Kutcher in it is my favourite of them, that kind of goes through the story, which again, I kind of see Steve Jobs in that same place. So his friend, Wozniak, whatever his face, is he Steve as well? Wozniak, whatever his name is. He's the one who created the Apple computer. And Steve Jobs, they both went to their computer clubs and whatever else, but he was the brainchild of it. And he saw the potential in his friend's idea. Mm-hmm. And steps, whatever it is, they sell it. And he's the one who really orchestrates the sales and the growth and whatever else. And then it just explodes into this giant company. And you see within there, I think it's like the first 5 employees, of which Steve Jobs is one, their roles all started to get smaller and smaller. Someone who was their first engineer ended up being an engineer, not the chief of engineering or whatever it would be. Same with Wozniak, is some people grew with the business and others didn't. So watch the films, see eventually Steve Jobs got pushed out as well before he came back in. I've given some great speeches on this. I really love this subject. But again, there's a lot of stuff around his approach early on as to how well he did or didn't look after people. And there's a scene in one of the films where they're about to float or refinance or whatever it is, and they're talking about how many shares they're giving to people, and they're like, well, this person should get a lot more. And he's like, but he's an engineer. He might have been day one, but he was just an engineer. And again, he wasn't the brains behind the idea, but he was the brains behind the growth that would not have happened if it was left with the person who had the idea. And again, there's a lot, there's no one clear answer on it, because a bit like Ryan said, is without all the ins and outs that happened, would it have got to where it is? And there's no, you can't question the fact, it's here, I've got you on it right now, that this company changed the world. No question. You would not have smartphones if it wasn't, not in the way they are. Again, they didn't invent it, ironically, a bit like the story of Steve Jobs. Apple weren't the first company to create a personal computer. They weren't the first company to create a tablet device, but they were the first company to popularize it and mass market it. And would that have happened if that wasn't there in their ethos, what their practices are? And again, what he did at the start with growing it. And for me, there's just a parallel between those two things. And is it worth what happened for the people along the way? Or again, are there different ways to do that? Was it the right outcome, but the wrong method? Could you still look after the people as you do it?
Yeah, I think you can. It's just a different approach. And I think Steve did look after Steve. Steve looked after Wozniak?
Yeah, absolutely. They did very, very well out of it. But I think somewhere down the line, there's talk about the other people who were involved right at the start and how that worked and everything like that.
I think Steve Jobs was just very visionary, and that was his strength. He was be able to vision is what it was and drive it, and he was very uncompromising, I think. But at the same time, he did believe in people, and I think one of his things he said, I think one of the sayings he said that people with, I can't remember, can change it. I can't remember what it was exactly, but he comes out, his speech was just off the chart. It was so good to bring people in. It's kind of some people with such and such, can change the world. And I think he'd give people hope. He was the rebel, wasn't he, in the computer world, took on IBM because of his vision, and he was uncompromising. I think that's where he won, but he, at the same time, he didn't know what he wanted. Like you say, he got kicked off because he employed someone to be, was it Pepsi guy? Was it Pepsi guy came in, eventually got kicked off. And then he came back and saved it because of his drive, and he actually knew what that end goal would be and worked backwards from it and knew what he needed to take there. But I think there's some things that Steve Jobs did sacrifice for his family. I don't think he was the greatest family man. So I think from these lessons, what I gather is trying to pick the bit like you, Lee, with your buffet learner, picking the best bits of these best people and trying to incorporate those bits and trying to leave out the bits that weren't so good. And that's the lessons I try and take from these things. And I've heard a lot of people say that it's just trying to take the good out of those things. And would that have been successful? We just never know, will we? I think Steve Jobs was brilliant. His speeches, his keynotes were just the best. The best keynotes you'd ever see. He was just a very accomplished, different to McDonald's and Ray Kroc, I suppose, because Ray Kroc was more, I suppose, the process and how we can just maximise. Whereas Steve Jobs was a visionary. I think he gave a lot of inspiration. I think it's about inspiration. When inspiration can, something inspirational, can build stuff, and he proved that. He wasn't a computer expert, was he? He just utilised what he had and built something.
I suppose that's where it comes in, like you said, it's the visionary. You see stuff where people like, well, we didn't know anything about the technology. He's just a poser, blah, blah, blah. The same bit, Ray Kroc McDonald's thing didn't come up with the idea, but they knew how to take that and scale it. And I think there's a big, I think you've got to have that visionary person who can see what something can be and can run with it and can. I do, and it's something for another subject because I thought this is too much to put into it, but I just wanted to reference I'm a big believer in that kind of driving force. Steve Jobs drove that vision, and I think there's something really important about having someone who can inspire and lead and do a vision and drive stuff in the direction. A bit like you said with the McDonald's thing, Brian, is that it would have been a lot of compromise and hands off and this and that, and you end up with a kind of, although it's three of them, a decision by committee that is a watered down version of what all three of them wanted. So arguably is a compromise to everybody and probably doesn't achieve what any one of those one goals would have wanted to do. And I think having that, like Joe, you say, you need, businesses having mission statements is something you say is really important. And I think there's something in that person who can drive an ideal and a vision and take things and grow it. And I think the Ray Kroc thing said that to me, albeit again, I don't think he needed to screw him over on the money, but he probably at the time felt some sour grapes that maybe did or didn't regret later in life. You never know. And a bit like the same with the Steve Jobs things. I think it takes a point where sometimes stuff grows around people and some grow with it, some don't.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's Stephen Covey talks about the win-win, and I think that's what we should always go for. I think there's something, if you can both win, there should never be a win-lose situation. I think there's a win-lose situation. You get a win-win, and I get that thing. There could be a watered-down version, but is that down to the abilities of the leader to be able to do work that in a way? Because Steve Jobs really did bring people with him. He brought a lot of his company with him. He brought that. Brought a lot of people. He pushed the engineers to their limits, but he brought them. He said he wanted that. Like things like that wouldn't make any productive sense. So I want everybody to sign the circuit board. He wanted the inside of the machine to look as tidy as the outside of the machine. Things like that are uncompromising. I think that's where he just had that different level of thinking that drove people. Literally, so if you went to Ford and said, "We want you to every engine to be signed, like personally, so people when they opened up the machine or opened up the engine, it would just be clean. It'd be, you're crazy. What are you talking about?" So I think that level of, it's just a different level of thinking and drive. But Steve, I think, had that communication thing going on with him.
I believe with this, where I reference criticism says him, and there's a lot of them out there. The criticism it's nowhere my bit. I'm a big fan of what was achieved and what's done and everything like that. For me, having seen both of those, and it comes from the films as well as doing some reading and stuff. But I see a big parallel there between the two. And I thought we didn't get time to cover it all in one episode, but the follow on to the I'm Loving It episode that we did is I suppose that's the second big message in the film is, what he did and whether it was good or not. And I think ultimately there's no way it would have been what it is without it. I think it got a bit ruthless and shutting out people that probably would have got on board in the end if he did it in a different way.
You know, I think there's lessons to be learned from it though, as well. I think there's lessons from that we can learn from that. And I think nowadays, I still think it goes on. I think this still goes on. I expect there's a ton of companies that do this and fail, right? There's companies that go on and be amazing. But I think there's a good lesson to be learned about this, about making sure we treat people in the right way. Even though it's difficult and hard, you know, maybe it is a case that, look, I need to cut you up, but I'm going to give you good, whatever it is, but do it in a way which they feel like they've been treated fairly. I think it's really important. It's harder work. Of course, it takes more time, but I think there's a legacy, I think, that, you know, Ray Kroc's left a legacy of the way he treated, and that's been enshrined in history. Same as Steve Jobs now. You know, look at the film about, you know, he was brilliant in his business, but actually, was he a great father? Probably not. So we can just take these bits and learn our lessons, right? And just trying to, because doing the right things is, you know, doing the right things is usually the hard thing.
Yes.
And sometimes going the easy way and getting a good result, which they have, right? Which they have, it's good, but there's always that moral cost, I think. And I think that for me is, if you can get that both right, think of that amazing thing that you'd feel in a sense you can see for those businesses, that would you get even more kudos for that, I think. But like you say, you just never know what happened. Had Ray Kroc done differently, maybe they wouldn't have been successful. Who knows? We'll never ever know that. And that's the real annoying bit about it, is that had he slightly approached it differently, would he have got the same result? Who knows? Could he have used his communications to bring those guys on board to say, look, we just need to do this to get to this bit, you know, just trust me, whatever. I don't know, whatever would need to be taken, I don't know. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned. And for me, it's like, I'm going to be the buffet learner. I'm taking Lee's thing and just taking the bits that I like, that I think are really great, what Ray Kroc did, and what Steve Jobs, and try and incorporate that into my everyday. I think that works for me.
And I think, although, say, we focus on the more, I suppose, negative part of the story here, I would absolutely advocate anyone who, you know, a bit entrepreneurial, looking for some inspiration. Doesn't have to be about setting up your own business. You know, it could be just, you know, what you want to do, self-development, and, you know, seeing how things grow and change and what the passage of time does to things. I would absolutely advocate for part 2 of this semi-review. He's the founder, absolutely amazing film. I would put it on anyone's to watch list if they haven't seen it, because I just think, I know I came away feeling really inspired from watching it, and I would advocate other people do exactly the same thing.
Definitely, I think it is one of those inspiring films, because they've literally built it from nothing, didn't they? I mean, it's that whole, you know, ice cream seller to, you know, ridiculous world-changing food chain. I mean, same with Apple, from nothing, from a garage, you know, trying to buy parts for a computer, just trying to promising an order they couldn't fulfill, and they had to buy parts to fulfill an order. You know, that sort of stuff, which is like risk-taking but brave, and it worked out, is amazing. But there's lots of failures that happen. You know, Steve Jobs got kicked out. You know, he had to, but then he built Bit next, and then he built Pixar, right? Or he got involved in Pixar.
I think he invested his money into it.
And even at Next, he said he built an iOS, or built a software system. It hadn't been built. He'd just been selling it on the basis that it didn't have no software. But he'd been promised, you know, things like that. It's just bravery. It's like commitment to fulfill something. I mean, yeah, there's very inspiring things in both stories. Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. Ryan, any further thoughts on all of that from yourself?
I find it the buffet method from taking for all these guys an interesting one, because would they be so good if they weren't so bad? I think that's an obvious question that draws to me. You know, would Ray Kroc have been so successful if he had been more hearty? You know, would Steve Jobs have been so successful if he wasn't so dedicated to his cause? So it's interesting. It's interesting that well, I think it's just an interesting thought to kind of to ponder on, really.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key bits, is would it have been if not for that? Is that, unless, and I'm not saying it is, but is that part of the journey? Is it not? And said it's picking out bits you like and don't like, and there's no one answer for anybody. Everyone has different ways on it, and I think it's back to a thing you always say, Joe, and I think it's 2 things. One is intentions. It's not even what the actions are or the outcome. What are your intentions in doing it? Because sometimes things can go wrong, even though you've got good intentions. And I think as long as your intentions are always good and links are true to yourself, that's probably going in the right direction. You pick the bits that fit with it, and then the second is that, like you said, is you know your integrity. What for you is right, what is wrong, and you know keeping on that path where you're not pushing yourself too far out of your own integrity. And I think as long as you're going down both those lines and you're taking elements from people that speak to them, you're probably on the right course.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think you know, integrity, I think, is so important. I think you can have intention, but you can have the wrong behaviours, right?
Yes.
On that, you've got good intentions to help, but you say something or do something that will rub someone on the way, and then the integrity part, I say, guys, I apologise, and apologise without excuses. You know, my intention was this, but that was the wrong behaviour. And I think there's a lot of, you know, I think there could be a lot more of that, because I think sometimes, you know, ego can get in the way. But I totally agree. I think, you know, I think Simon Sinek talks about, you know, people. You know, it's the people game, isn't it? It's really helping your people. And of course, there is resources. Of course, there's people and profit, right? But people should always be over the profit. But profit's still got to be important. It's still got to make money. You can't just do it. So it's got to be a nice balance. But people should just always be a bit ahead of that, because people is what make it work, right? Without people, it doesn't work. So I'm a big believer in people making things work. And these things that would work or not work. I mean, McDonald's is a great story. You know, Apple's a great story. People still want to work for Apple massively, right? My daughter's inspired by Apple. McDonald's, people still work at McDonald's. I'm not sure it's got the same appeal, but you know, but people do work there. There's good stopgap, so you know they definitely provide a service. So yeah, for me, I know I always encourage people, if they are going to work for a company or start a business, I think about the culture, think about who you're working for and what is the type of leader they've got, because that's going to come down through the culture. So it's never something I used to do. If I'm going to go for a job or something, really good to research who is the leader of that business to see whether you align with those true values of that leader. It's something that I've never done in the past, and it's something that I've learned over years. And you know, I've been lucky enough to fall into companies that have had good leadership. So I've been very fortunate, but I think there's something, you know, that I've taken away from my experiences, you know, going through my life, I suppose.
Excellent. That covers off your takeaway there, in fact, Joe. So I like that.
Yeah. Your two then.
Ironically, in the show about McDonald's, Ryan, what is your takeaway? I love a good takeaway pun. It's my favourite thing.
Good one, Luke.
Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions for a positive outcome. I can't imagine that Ray Croc chopping out the two brothers was something he sat and rubbed his hands together and went, yeah, this is a great idea. I'm sure there was a part of him that was, even at the time, remorseful and, you know, hopefully empathetic to their cause and kind of said, well, I really want this to succeed. I don't think you guys have the vision to do so. And he did it for the best of the business. Yes, his pocket as well, but for the best of the business, I guess.
It would be interesting, like Lee said, though, to go back and being able to ask him that question as to, now, would he have done everything differently had he had his time again? Probably the answer would probably be no, but it would be interesting to
considering how successful the business is. I can't imagine that he would change his.
It would be interesting. I think you've got a good point there. Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. I'm for what's a really good conversation with lots in it. I'm struggling for a specific takeaway for what was my subject, I suppose, or how to articulate it. But I think it's just consider the bigger picture, including the people.
Yes, I think it's considering impact, isn't it? I think it's a really good. It's like, you know, it's like, don't react. It's that whole piece about responding, isn't it? It's like, you know, for the best interest of the people and the business, right? Don't know if we've got enough time, but there was a really interesting thing. I think I can't remember, I read a book in some way, shape or form, where the business was going to go under. And instead of making people redundant, they actually put out to the people, right, we're struggling, we want to like make things better. And the culture in the business was such that the people decided to take a pay rise to save the business so they could actually still be employed but not lose their jobs. But they felt had such a good team ethos that they decided to do that for a temporary piece until the business got back on its feet, and then decided. And I thought that was a really refreshing piece of thing, you know, where we hear about redundancies and hear about things like that, where, you know, I don't think it happened. You know, I've been made redundant, so I know what it's like. And I think that sort of thing where businesses work with their people, although it can be really painful because you're going to have to let your people know that, hey, we're not doing great, but can they have the people help the business become more successful and then reward the people for getting the business back on its feet? I think that is such an inspiring thing to do, and very brave from leaders to do that. And that is something that I read somewhere and I thought that inspired me. I thought that's the sort of thing I'd love to see a lot more of. Especially now we're in a pandemic and stuff like that, where people are struggling. How can we still look after people even in the space and shape or form where people may be getting laid off, especially this time of year, which is always difficult. So heart goes out to all those types of people as well. So just to put it out there, I've got a bit moral there. It's like, just went on a bit of a thread, but there you go.
I like it. No, thank you for that, Joe. So this is our last podcast before Christmas. It's important to say Merry Christmas to everyone, I feel. Those listening, watching, and to you guys as well. Have good ones.
Yeah.
To those on TikTok, especially, again, shout out to Mr. Ockie's Long. Thank you for getting involved in the show. We appreciate that.
I love it. Yeah. So thanks, TikTok. Appreciate it. I actually laugh when you keep. I don't know why I'm getting giggles, but it's probably because of it.
It's the red wine, I think, Joe. It's the red wine.
A bit flushed, I think. But no, I just want to say, happy Christmas, guys. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. Thanks to, like you said, Lee, all the listeners, all the watchers on TikTok, on YouTube, all across the piece. We really appreciate it, because we wouldn't be here, having this conversation if it wasn't for you guys, and we do appreciate it. And again, if you want us to talk about anything, then let us know. Let Lee, Ryan, myself know, and we can raise those subjects and have discussions about them. That's what I'd encourage you to do. There you go. Happy Christmas and
perfect, yes. We are. I was going to say there'll be one more of the year, which is next week. We may have some more drinky poos of that one as well. We'll see how it goes. Listen to Toin, if you want to get involved. Ryan's definitely up for the drinks based on that face he just made. And again, head over inspirationnation.org.uk, full archive of all our shows, links to Joe's newsletter, full detail of the coaching service, and Inspiration Nation store, where you can get Inspiration Nation mugs, mug shot for the camera that's got them. Again, very topical. Back on face masks, Inspiration Nation branded, hoodies, t-shirts, socks, I think, as well. Whatever you want. No tote bags. I took them down. I didn't like it in the end, but loads of great merch for a post-Christmas gift, people. There we go. We got it all. We'll be back again next week in a same inebriated form. I'll probably be moved on from eggnog by then, but it's going down very well tonight.
What will be the next version? What are you thinking?
It's either going to be, as well, I was going to say, I'm quite into gin at the moment, so it might be gin.
Blimey, gin. And do you know what, Ryan, did you mention your drinks on the podcast, Brian? Because you said it so coolly before,
This isn't cool. I just said I'm having a couple of buds, which is just Budweiser. Everyone knows that. Now, I don't think that's a cool thing. I think that's just that it just is what it is.
I'd agree with you, Ryan. I hate to disagree with you, Joe, but Ryan's never been cool.
Never. What about before we go, Lee? What's going on with your pledge from a couple of weeks ago about being mindful of positions of your subconsciousness and how these messages are received?
Yeah, when was the most recent? So I've had a few of these where I keep pushing myself on the, afterwards when that doubt creeps in, I'm like, I wish I'd done that different, or someone thought something bad about me. I'm going, no, presume it was good. And it's still making me feel more confident in myself because I'm less self-conscious about interactions and stuff. And it still pops in and out of my head in various situations at various times, where in both ways is one is me interacting with people and just pushing through and not apologizing for myself or thinking I should do something different or backing away, but also when something's going on where I'd normally think, why have they done that, or what's that person done that for, or anything like that, I'm thinking, no, there's a reason. It's probably a good reason. Again, not 100% of the time, not always doing it, but it's there, and I do think it is making me a more relaxed, if that's the right word, person. Less insecurities running through my, but it's a trigger I'm very conscious of right now in my head.
Good.
But again, I would advocate. I think it's a good path to go down.
I like it, and I said I was keep doing it, but I don't think I am. But I'm just I am reflecting, but it's like, do I think I'm judging? That's the thing. It's a difficult one, isn't it? But yeah, I like it. I still like it. But maybe something you can keep reminders to Lee. Ryan, brilliant for bringing it up. I love that. Holding him to account. Love it. When I'm right.
Push him out of comfort zone. Especially did it. I went to the barbers. My thoughts on that. Went in and I said hi. Normally I kind of skulking through the door, and I walked in and I said hi, and both the guys there said hi and friendly, which I know is probably not a big thing for a lot of people, but I'd feel self-conscious about doing that because I'd worry what they'd think about me, but actually it was all good.
I think it's brilliant.
We've not made much of a deal about Lee dragging himself out of his homeless phase back to a respectable human.
And look at not only this is how much I've got on. Not only do I get him to cut my hair, which as you say is not all shabby and everything, but I get him to trim my beard as well. I ask for more time in that awkward chair.
I love that. Sitting with the uncomfortably. That is proper pushing yourself. That's brilliant, mate. That's so good. I love that. So good. Well done. Honestly.
It all ties in on that journey.
Yeah, and this is what it's all about. This whole podcast is about a journey, isn't it? This is what it's about. It's about, you guys on TikTok, pushing yourselves, listeners, viewers. It's all about doing those difficult things that you'd push yourself out and you wouldn't necessarily do them. Just trying those little, there's a big thing for you, Lee, to go in and say hi, isn't it? That's not a small thing. I think, never demean that, because that for you is a big thing. And you say, oh, not everybody, but everyone's got their own stuff. And I think that for you is a big thing. So massive kudos to you. So,
and obviously that's a thing we've used as a reference point for ages. But again, I think it ties in on the... I'm not presuming any judgment, not presuming judgment, and I'm not giving judgment. And again, not all the time, not 100%, no one's perfect, but I keep pushing myself on it. And thanks for the question, Ryan. It's good. I want to keep seeing where we are on that.
Good.
Right, we are all but out of time, guys. I think I need to count us down. Again, listeners, watchers, thank you very much. One show left for 2021. We will be back next week. I nearly ran out of words there. The eggnog is kicking in strongly. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Inspiration Nation.
Catch you guys later.
So I want to know now, what's your biggest takeaway? Don't forget to hashtag it with Inspiration Nation in the comments below, and make sure you commit to action. Right, thank you for checking it out. So don't forget to catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here. So go check them out. Also, don't forget to subscribe, because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you right over there.